Hey everyone! In this video, our question is, what are the effects of polyploidy? Specifically, we'll cover the effects that polyploidy has on the growth and development of plants. Polyploidy can sometimes, though not always, result in larger fruits and flowers. The cells in these plants are larger, which might be the result of larger nuclei needed to house the additional chromosome sets. One example of increased fruit size is the octoploid strawberry, which is 8x equals 56. This is the variety that's most commonly sold commercially and the one you'll most likely encounter in stores. Though there are many species of strawberry with various ploidies, the diploid varieties tend to have smaller fruit. Here is a wild diploid strawberry species, which is 2x equals 14. This is the yellow fruit here in the middle of the flower. It's very small compared to the octoploid strawberry fruit. A second effect of polyploidy is increased heterozygosity, mainly in allopolyploids. Recall that heterozygosity is the presence of two different alleles of a gene within the same organism. For example, if an individual has the genotype A1, A2. Of course, individuals within a non-polyploid population can also be heterozygous. But allopolyploids tend to be heterozygous at more genes. Why is that? Recall that allopolyploids, for example, this allotetraploid, are usually the offspring of two different parent species, which we'll call species 1 and species 2. Species that interbreed to produce polyploids are usually closely related, so they'll often have the same genes. But because they are different species, often have different alleles of those genes. Here, species 1 has A1 alleles of the A gene and the B1 alleles of the B gene, while species 2 has different alleles for those genes. When individuals of different species produce a polyploid, and we saw how this occurs in the last video, they both contribute, in this example, all of their alleles. So the allotetraploid has both A1 alleles and both A2 alleles, both B1 alleles, and both B2 alleles. So the allotetraploid has 4 alleles of each gene, and because alleles coming from different species will likely be different, many genes, like the A gene and the B gene here, are heterozygous. That is, they contain more than one type of allele. This allotetraploid has both the A1 and A2 alleles for gene A, and the B1 and B2 alleles for gene B. So again, allopolyploids like this one are more likely to be heterozygous at many genes because they're getting their alleles from two different species. Increased heterozygosity can cause hybrid vigor, which is when the presence of two different alleles increases fitness, which can come with an increase in size. A third effect of polyploidy can be reduced fertility, often as a result of non-viable gametes. We've actually already discussed this in allopolyploids in the last video when we examined how allopolyploids are produced. Here's the drawing from that video. Now, we saw that production of a fertile amphidiploid which can make viable gametes, can be produced by non-disjunction early on in mitosis. But this is a very rare occurrence. The more likely outcome of a hybridization is a hybrid plant that produces non-viable gametes, and therefore has reduced fertility. Whether in allo or auto polyploids, reduced fertility is often particularly pronounced in triploid species. Here's a triploid cell with two chromosome types, a large one and a small one. Now let's replicate its chromosomes. Because there are 3 of each chromosome type, in the 2 daughter cells produced by meiosis I, 2 of the large chromosomes go to one cell, and 1 of the large chromosome goes to the other cell. Same goes for the smaller chromosome type. When these cells go through meiosis II, some will have 1 extra large chromosome, while some will have 1 extra small chromosome. As we know from our study of aneuploidy, abnormal numbers of chromosomes reduce the viability of the gametes and cause the spontaneous abortion of embryos, reducing the fertility of that organism. Now, if there was only 2 chromosome types, as in this example, some of the gametes would get 1 of each chromosome type and be viable. But most plants have 5 or more chromosome types, so it's pretty unlikely that in a triploid, meiosis will produce a gamete with exactly 1 of each chromosome type. This is why we see a reduction in fertility in triploids. This reduced fertility can be beneficial if you're a human who doesn't like seeds in their fruit. As we saw before, the triploid banana has aborted embryos within the fruit, compared to the large and less palatable wild bananas, which have large seeds. Okay, so at this point you've seen 4 videos on polyploidy. By now, you should be familiar with the different types of polyploidy, how they're described, how polyploidy is produced, both in nature and artificially, and the effects that polyploidy can have. That's a lot to remember, so feel free to review what you need to, and make sure you've completed all the learning guides as well. And that brings us to the end of our videos on chromosomal mutations. So at this point, you should be pretty familiar with aneuploidy, polyploidy, and chromosomal rearrangements. It also brings us to the end of Module 3. In this module, I've given you kind of a generalized picture of how meiosis works. However, plants and animals carry out meiosis and fertilization quite differently, and it's these differences that will be the subject of our next module, Module 4. So I will see you all then.